All right, ready to go deep? Today, we're going to be diving into the story of Job.
Oh, Job.
Yeah, one of those stories that just, keeps coming back around, echoing through time from millennia.
It is, yeah.
You sent us a retelling of it, and we're going to be using that as our jumping off point for this deep dive.
Sounds good.
What's so fascinating to me about this story is how it just tackles these massive, universal questions about suffering and faith.
Right, yeah.
The things that we're still grappling with today.
Exactly. And I think it's not just an ancient story, it's a reflection of the human experience.
Yeah.
I mean, who hasn't grappled with why bad things happen?
Yeah.
To people who seem to be living, quote unquote, good lives.
Right.
That's the big question.
Yeah. And this retelling really, it just hits you with the why right away.
Yeah.
It introduces Job as this, incredibly prosperous guy, the richest man in the East,
Right.
blessed with a huge family, tons of possessions, a reputation for being a genuinely good person.
He's got it all.
And then, just like that, everything changes.
Oh, yeah,
It
yeah.
all comes crashing down.
That's a pretty stark contrast.
Yeah.
I mean, to go from having everything to losing everything.
Yeah.
That's really crucial to the story's power.
It is.
It forces us to just confront this age-old question.
Yeah.
Why do bad things happen to good people?
Mm-hmm.
It's like the rug is just pulled out from under Job.
Yeah.
And under us as the readers, too.
And not like a minor setback or anything. This is like...
The total devastation.
Yeah, the retelling really describes, vividly how Job loses his livestock, his servants.
Oh, God, wow.
And then even all 10 of his children.
Oh, that's terror.
It's just a series of absolutely devastating events.
Wow.
It's honestly hard to even fathom the depth of his grief.
And what's striking is how the text emphasizes, the totality of Job's loss.
Right.
It's not just about, material wealth. It's the loss of everything that gave his life, meaning his family, his work, his sense of security.
Yeah.
It's like the story is just deliberately pushing us to the edge of what's bearable.
Right.
Asking, how can anyone maintain faith when faced with this kind of devastation?
And then the retelling throws in this little detail, and I thought this was so interesting.
Oh, yeah?
His own wife tells him to curse God and die.
Wow, talk about adding insult to injury.
So can you imagine?
It's coming from the person who's supposed to be your biggest source of support.
Right.
Your wife.
Yeah.
That moment is just so raw and powerful.
It is.
I think it speaks to how suffering can just fracture even the closest relationships.
Yeah.
Job's wife represents a very human response to this unimaginable pain,
Yeah.
anger, despair,
Yeah.
and a sense of abandonment, even by God.
Right.
It's a perspective that I think a lot of people can relate to,
Yeah.
even if they wouldn't necessarily say it out loud.
Yeah. And it just makes Job's response even more remarkable.
What does he do?
He refuses to blame God.
Really?
Yeah.
After all of that?
He tears his clothes, he shaves his head, he's sitting in ashes. He's fully expressing his grief,
Yeah.
but he doesn't curse God.
Wow, what a strong faith he must have.
It's almost superhuman, the way he clings to his faith, despite all of this.
It's true. It's easy to see why Job's unwavering faith is often seen as the central theme of the whole story. But it's also important to remember that his faith isn't just this blind, passive acceptance.
Right.
He wrestles with doubt.
Right.
Questions God's justice. Even curses the day he was born.
Yeah.
He's in deep pain, and he doesn't shy away from expressing it.
He doesn't sugarcoat anything.
No, not at all.
And that happens next.
Enter his friends,
Yeah.
Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar.
Oh, the friends?
They show up,
Here we go.
presumably to offer comfort.
Yeah. Seems like the right thing to do.
But they just become like the friends you love to hate.
Oh, no.
They're so convinced that Job must have done something to deserve this punishment
Right.
that they completely miss the point.
Their response is so fascinating.
Yeah.
I think it goes beyond just being annoying or insensitive. It's
Right.
it reveals this human need to try and make sense of suffering,
Yeah.
especially when it feels so random and unfair.
Right.
We struggle with the idea that bad things can happen to good people without some sort of reason or explanation.
Yeah, it's like they need to believe in a universe where everything happens for a reason.
Right.
Even if that reason is that the person suffering somehow brought it upon themselves.
Exactly. They embody this worldview that says, if you're suffering, you must have done something wrong.
Yeah.
It's like a way of imposing order on a chaotic world.
Right.
But it often leads to just blaming the victim.
Yeah. And that's precisely what the story of Job challenges.
It does. It does.
It's like they just can't handle the idea that sometimes bad things just happen.
And their insistence on blaming Job just adds to his pain.
It's the opposite of comfort.
The opposite of comfort.
You know, they become these walking, talking representations of like a limited view of God.
Yeah.
A God who only rewards the righteous and punishes the wicked.
Right.
But as we're going to see, the story is going to push us to consider a much more complex and nuanced view of both God and suffering.
The back and forth between Job and his friends is intense.
Oh, I bet.
He doesn't just sit there and take their accusations.
Good for him.
He pushes back.
Yeah.
He challenges their explanations. And he demands that God herself answer his questions.
Bold move.
Yeah, he wants a face-to-face with the Almighty.
Wow.
What I find so compelling about this is it shows how doubt and faith can actually coexist.
Oh, that's interesting.
You know, you can have both
at
the same time.
Absolutely. Job's refusal to accept those easy answers and his bold questioning of God, those aren't signs of weak faith. They demonstrate like a profound desire for genuine understanding.
Yes.
He's not content with blind acceptance.
Yeah.
He wants a deeper, more authentic relationship with God.
Right.
Even if it means wrestling with all these difficult questions.
Yeah.
He even tells his friends, undoubtedly, you are the only people who matter, and wisdom will die with you.
Wow.
But I, too, have a mind. I am not inferior to you.
What a statement.
It's a really powerful statement of his own intellectual and spiritual autonomy.
He's not going to be talked down to or dismissed, even by his friends.
Not a chance.
But for now, he's stuck, abandoned by his friends, grappling with this pain and just desperately seeking answers.
Poor Job.
And then something extraordinary happens.
What's that? All that questioning, all that, searching leads to like a dramatic encounter.
Yeah.
God actually appears.
No way.
But not how anyone would expect.
Oh, okay.
Imagine like a whirlwind.
Okay.
A storm, like cosmic proportions. And from within that chaos, God speaks.
That's quite an entrance.
It is.
It's like God saying, all right, Job, you wanna talk?
Yeah.
You want some answers? Let's talk.
Yeah.
But first, let me remind you who you're dealing with.
Exactly. And God doesn't just start with like a simple explanation or a, pat on the back.
Right.
Instead, God challenges Job with this series of questions.
Oh, really?
Pointing to the vastness and the complexity of creation.
Like what kind of questions?
Like, where were you when I laid the earth's foundation?
Oh.
Tell me if you understand. And the retelling goes on to describe, the wonders of the cosmos, boundaries of the sea, like the formation of the clouds.
Wow.
It's just a breathtaking display of divine power.
It's like God's giving Job and us, the readers, like a cosmic reality check.
Yeah.
It's this reminder of the limits of human understanding. Like, can we, with our tiny little finite minds, really grasp the reasons behind like every event, every instance of suffering in a universe this big?
It's not about like belittling Job's pain.
Okay.
But it's about placing it within this larger context.
Yeah.
God even describes the behemoth.
Oh, yeah.
This magnificent creature of just immense power and strength, highlighting, the diversity and wonder of all creation.
Right.
It's almost as if God is saying, look at all this, Job. I created all of this. And you're questioning me about one small part of my grand design.
Wow. It's a powerful moment.
It is.
It's very humbling. It's not like a direct answer to the why of Job's suffering.
Right.
But it's this profound shift in perspective.
Yeah.
So how does Job respond to this?
Well, Job is just overwhelmed by God's presence.
Yeah.
And he recognizes his own smallness in the face of the creator of the universe.
Right.
And he repents for questioning God, acknowledging, the limits of human understanding. The retelling actually quotes him saying,
what does he say?
My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you.
Wow.
Therefore, I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes.
There's a real humility in that statement.
There is.
It's not about like blind submission. It's about like accepting that there are things we just can't comprehend.
Yeah. We just can't wrap our minds around.
And so his encounter with God doesn't erase his pain or answer all his questions, but it seems to transform like his understanding of his place in the world.
Of where he fits in. Yeah.
Right. he moves from demanding answers to acknowledging the mystery.
He does.
But then here's where the story, takes another turn.
Oh, what happens?
It ends with Job being restored to prosperity.
Right after all that.
God blesses him with twice as much livestock as he had before.
More than he had before.
And he has 10 more children.
Oh, so a happy ending after all.
Yeah. Is that
God rewarding Job for his faithfulness?
Oh, or is it something else?
The ending of Job is often debated.
Yeah, I can see why.
Some people see it as a simple reward for his steadfast faith.
Okay.
Others interpret it as an affirmation of God's mercy and power.
Yeah.
Acting independently of human understanding.
Yeah. Right.
This retelling leans towards the interpretation that God's, emphasizing the blessings of the latter part of Job's life.
It's interesting that even though Job never gets a clear explanation for his suffering, he seems to find peace.
He does.
He doesn't get an answer to his why, but he seems to find solace in the mystery of God's ways.
Exactly. And I think that's a key takeaway for us, the listeners. The story of Job doesn't offer a simple solution to the problem of suffering.
No.
It doesn't give us this neat and tidy explanation for why bad things happen. Instead, it invites us to wrestle with these difficult questions, to acknowledge the limits of our understanding, and to find meaning and hope, even in the midst of pain and uncertainty.
I like how this retelling also highlights something else about the story. I thought this was really interesting.
What's that?
It concludes with this focus on Jesus and accepting him as your savior.
Right.
Now that's not explicitly part of the original book of Job.
Right.
It seems like the author of this retelling wanted to add their own spiritual interpretation.
Yeah.
Connecting the story to Christian theology.
It's a great example of how ancient texts can be reinterpreted and adapted over time.
Yes.
It reminds us that these stories, they continue to resonate with people in different ways.
Right.
And they're often used to explore a wide range of spiritual and philosophical ideas.
What stands out to you the most about this retelling? Do you find yourself, relating to Job's response to suffering? Or maybe sympathizing with his wife's reaction?
For me, what's fascinating is how the story presents all these different responses to suffering without condemning any of them.
Right.
You have Job's wife who in her, grief and anger urges him to curse God.
Right.
You have his friends who insist that he must have sinned.
Right.
And then you have Job himself.
Yeah.
Just wrestling with doubt, questioning God's justice.
Yeah.
Each response reflects a different way of coping with the unthinkable. And that's what makes the book of Job so relatable, even, thousands of years later.
Right.
It doesn't offer easy answers.
No.
Or prescribe a single correct way to deal with suffering.
Right.
It invites us to grapple with these questions on a personal level.
Yeah.
To find meaning in our own experiences.
Right.
And to acknowledge the complexity of faith and the human condition.
Yeah, it's like the stories saying, hey, there's no one right way to respond to pain and loss.
Yeah.
We all process things differently, and that's okay.
Exactly. And let's not forget about those friends.
Oh, yeah, the friends.
Yeah, their reaction, though frustrating, offers a valuable lesson for us, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Their insistence on blaming Job, on needing to find a reason for his suffering, that's a cautionary tale.
It is.
It highlights how our desire for order and explanation can sometimes lead us down the wrong path.
Totally.
To judging others, missing the opportunity for genuine compassion.
They represent that all too human tendency to want to fit suffering into these neat little boxes.
Right. We tell ourselves if someone's going through something terrible, it must be because they did something to deserve it.
Right.
But Job it shatters that view.
It does.
It reminds us to be really careful about offering easy answers or platitudes to people who are hurting.
Yeah. Sometimes the most helpful thing we can do is just listen.
Yeah.
Be present with their pain and just offer support without judgment.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
The story of Job is, at its core, a call for compassion and understanding.
It's an invitation to walk alongside those who are suffering, to acknowledge their pain without trying to explain it away. and to offer like genuine comfort instead of empty platitudes.
Makes you think about like how I respond when people in my life are going through tough times. Do I offer empty platitudes or do I really listen?
It's a question we should all ask ourselves, honestly. And it's not always easy.
Right.
Sometimes it's just uncomfortable to sit with someone else's pain.
Yeah.
Especially when we don't have like answers or solutions.
Yeah.
But the story of Job reminds us that our presence and empathy can be more valuable than any words of explanation.
So what does all this mean for us, the listeners, as we go about our lives?
That's the big question.
Maybe we're not facing the kind of extreme suffering that Job experienced.
Right.
But we all inevitably encounter, challenges, losses, moments of questioning.
That's life.
What can we take away from this deep dive?
The story of Job, it doesn't give us easy answers.
No.
It doesn't tell us why we suffer or how to make sense of every painful experience.
Right.
But it offers something perhaps even more profound.
Okay.
Like an invitation to engage with the mystery of life.
Yeah.
It reminds us that it's okay to wrestle with doubt, to question God. It encourages us to seek a deeper understanding of ourselves, our faith, the world around us, even if that understanding remains elusive.
And maybe most importantly, it reminds us that even in the darkest moments, we can choose to hold on to hope and to find solace in the fact that we are not alone.
We're not alone.
In our struggles. That even amidst the vastness and complexity of the universe, our experiences matter, our questions matter, and our search for meaning matters.
Absolutely.
The story of Job is a reminder that the human spirit is incredibly resilient.
It really is.
And that even in the face of unimaginable suffering, we can find ways to persevere, to grow, and to find a measure of peace.
Exactly. The story may be ancient.
Yeah.
But its message is timeless.
It is.
It's this invitation to continue exploring the complexities of faith, suffering, and the human condition.
Yeah.
And to find our own meaning in the midst of life's mysteries.
Well, that's about all the time we have for today.
Already.
I know, it goes by fast.
It does.
But hey, that's the story of Job for you.
Timeless and thought-provoking.
Always leaves you with more questions than answers.
That's the power of a good story.
It is.
It stays with you.
It does.
Makes you think.
Makes you think.
And hopefully, makes you a little bit wiser.
Makes you a little bit wiser.
Yeah.
Until next time.
See you then.